Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss the issues in our communities that we can truly try and fix and will fix. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Kareem Neal. Kareem is a self contained special education teacher in Phoenix, Arizona. He has taught students with cognitive delays for 25 years. He is the 2019 Arizona Teacher of the Year and is a 2022 inductee into the National Teachers Hall of Fame. He is the first Arizona teacher inducted into the National Teachers Hall of Fame and the first Black teacher to be State Teacher of the Year in Arizona. He is on the board of directors for the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards and the National Network of State Teachers for the Year. He was awarded an honorary doctorate from Northern Arizona University for his contributions to special education in Arizona. He is a 2019-2021 Understood Teacher Fellow. He also helped pilot the National Network of State Teachers of the Year mentorship program. Kareem's passion is connecting all students in schools, springing from his awareness that students with learning differences do not truly feel like members of their school communities. This led him to evaluate his educational journey and how students in Black communities often did not feel like education spaces were for them. He is now a restorative justice trainer for the Phoenix Union High School District. He focuses on building community by eliminating bias that stems from a lack of connection with people who are different from each other. This work was led this work has led him to win the Arizona Education Association's diversity grant and be named vice president of the Phoenix Union High School District's Black Alliance. Kareem's academic journey was filled with adults who told him he was capable, which he attributes to being a lifetime learner. Too many students are not afforded that same opportunity, and Kareem is working tirelessly to change that. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kareem Neal. Hello, sir. We cannot hear you. No. Check your mic. Is it muted or is it on? Okay. Um, are you using your computer's microphone? Yes. Oh wait, no, no. Wait, no, 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 no. Let's do this. Uh try to try to go off and come back on. Yes. Okay. No. Let me take us back into the back room, and let's see if we can get this figured out. No. Okay. No. Kareem, there you go. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Kareem?
Hello?
Yes.
Is it working?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Sorry about all that. I don't know what's happening.
That is no problem. I'm happy to have you on the show and thank you for taking the time. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
It looks like it was my fault. Sorry about that.
That's okay. What I read about you in your bio, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Man, I mean, it sounded really good. uh, I mean, I don't know if my bios stress that this is my 28th year in the classroom, which is kind of what I'm most proud of. I know, the State Teacher of the Year award was kind of a big deal here, particularly in Arizona when I was the first Black one in 35 years. Um,
Mhm.
and National Teacher Hall of Fame was a big deal because the only educator in Arizona that is in the National Teachers Hall of Fame. I was the first, so that's
Oh,
pretty
wow.
cool. Outside of that, it's just I think all the other stuff was, highlighted. I think a lot of the kind of large successes I've had in my career so far.
Well, I got to tell you, the thing that I think reigns more superior than anything is, as I think about it, is when we think about in today's time and we think about education, we think of the lack thereof, for people that look like us, because there's always been an inequity, but we made a lot of strides to try to catch up with that. And you are definitely a perfect example of what it takes as an educator, that parents should be proud to have their kids in your class.
Yeah, I now I think nowadays it's kind of half the country is frustrated with teachers, half the country still loves us. When I started, it was kind of this universal, like, oh, you're a teacher, that's great. And so now, it's you certainly have to to earn the trust and respect of the people around you, because the landscape has gotten a little politicized and things like that. But yeah, I think that part is a really cool part. That and my school is almost all Black and brown kids, so
Mhm.
it's really nice parents who feel confident knowing that I'm gonna do everything I can to make sure their students leave with more skills than they had.
Well, I tell you, I wish I had that opportunity when I was in school, because that wasn't the case. So, can you tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in special education?
Well, that was a little bit of luck. My undergrad was chemical engineering. I kind of have a big math science family. My brother's an engineer, and sister loves math as well. But I was working at the rec center my school went for the special. I met some of the athletes, loved it, and was like, "This is what I want to do." So I had to go to grad school. I was too far in. So I went to graduate school and I worked as a paraprofessional, like a teacher assistant, in a classroom for students with autism. And that kind of solidified it for me. I was just like, all right. So it was kind of one day. It was like I was at a Special Olympics event. I love the authenticity of the kids who were competing, because a lot of times folks who are my age, even, I was a junior in college at the time. And
Mhm.
so most folks that age, where we really are acting, looking, and talking like everybody else around us. And it was this group of kids who were close in age to us, because there was like a local high school one, who the folks were, living more out loud and being more themselves. And I love that authenticity, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I jumped into it and I dove right in.
So, can you tell us? I mean, like, were there like some challenges in the beginning, or just over a period of time? Are there like some challenges that you have to deal with that you've got to take a little bit more time to get things together?
Yeah, I think for me, the challenges were around the biases that now I go around the country speaking about, right? It was, I had a teacher who was like when my first day here, I teach at now, I've been here for 18 years, who was just like, oh, they're going to listen to you. You're a big Black guy. You know, it was just like, first of all, it sounds like you've never been in a special education classroom, first of all, because that is not
Right.
how that goes. And second of all, helping to me talk and my resume and all of my education, and then judge me based on that. So yeah, and the funny thing was, after that, all the challenges were also around what I felt like was a bias. It was a principal who was just, he had a personal thing. He feel like it was based on what he assumed me to be. I was just a big Black guy, and it was just like, if he talks to me crazy and then I say something back to him, he's like, "What, are you gonna hit me or something?" I was like, "Bro, I am an educator. I'm a professional. I'm not gonna beat you up." You know. And so it was weird. Sorry about that. We got a bell ringing in the background, but yeah, it was that kind of stuff weighed on me much heavier. Sorry about the noise. That kind of stuff weighed on me much heavier than, behavior management in my classroom, and, academic, struggle with students that where I might be, reteaching something a lot of time. Those things never really wore me down, but there was definitely times where whether it be that rogue administrator or a teacher like that teacher who saw me the first day and said they're going to be well behaved because I'm big, that kind of stuff frustrated me, because you feel like you're going to be out of those kind of spaces in your head as a young person. Now I'm an old person, but as a
Right.
young person, it was like, oh, I no longer, because I grew up in kind of an all Black neighborhood, kind of hood. So, some stuff was happening. You feel like, oh, I didn't mess around. I went to college. I went to graduate school. I got my master's degree. I'm out here dressed in a suit and people are still looking at me the same way. And so it kind of wore me down a little bit more than the difficulties of work.
Right. So, can you share a memorable moment from your teaching career that had a significant impact on you?
Yeah, I have several. I will do. I'll do a positive one and maybe one that's impacted me negatively. Um, so Positively, when I came to Maryville High School, the high school I teach at now, which is a great, great place, um, I had worked only in schools for kids with autism before that, right? At a school in New Jersey called the Developmental Learning Center of New Providence, and then a school in Arizona called the Children's Center for Neurodevelopmental Studies. Then I came here, and this is a comprehensive high school, so it has gen ed classes, special ed classes, and all that. And I was just sticking with my special ed folks because I had this mindset of like students in gen ed classes are, bad. They talk to people crazy and all of that stuff. I had biases in my head, particularly, these young boys out here saying the N word every time I see them, et cetera, et cetera, and I stayed away. And one day I was working on a Saturday, just kind of getting some extra paperwork done and stuff like that, because the job takes a lot. And a teacher was there. She was like, "Come see this," right? She just came out of the gym, was like, "Come see this," and I was like, and it was what I call now kind of the social justice club called Panther Town,
Mhm.
and they were doing a bunch of activities based around race and gender and all of that.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I saw that, and it changed everything for me in terms of the way I was viewing other students. And it really made me want to dive into my own biases. And then that led me on the path to doing this restorative justice work and saying, hey, if people aren't checking their biases, they're not getting a full experience in their schooling. And
Mhm.
so I think for me, that day was definitely the most impactful. I won't even go into the negative. I'll say that is the most impactful day because it opened up my. I think I've always had an activist spirit. My parents were like that, um, and so I think doing. I came in saying, "Oh, I'm gonna be the biggest advocate for special education in the world," and then and when I'm not doing that, I'm doing it for Black kids, and my bell again, and so I was like, I need to do it for every kid. I need for people to understand that we are connected as people and we need to find ways to better connect to our classmates, teachers, colleagues, all that. And so it changed my mindset in a positive way. And that led me to a lot of this stuff, including, things like awards and stuff like that, because I decided I needed to spread this message to the world. And so I was out there trying to do the work. Yeah.
Oh, wow. How do you tailor your teaching methods to meet the needs of students with cognitive delays?
Well, since I've always done it. I came in knowing that it was all about individualized instruction. The beauty of special education is that all students get individual education plans, right? And they call them IEPs. If anybody's heard the term IEP, that's what people are talking about. And so for me, that is just what we have always done. It is like I get a class of between 12 and 15 usually. Right now, my class, I have 14 students. Um, and all of them are learning at different rates, different levels, and we are expected to understand that, right? If the difference is general education teachers usually aren't doing that as much because they weren't called. It would be nice if we had an education system where all kids could, but there's too many kids, right?
Right.
But for me, that is second nature. That is the thing that special ed teachers I do think do best. We are saying, okay, we have to meet all students when they are because we have these individual education plans. And so it would be nice if everybody had one because there's so many students where it's like a student sitting in a desk all day is driving them crazy, right? There's a lot of adults who can't sit in a desk all day.
Mhm.
So maybe their instruction will call for breaks or time that they can sit up, walk around a room, stretch their legs, instead of being punished, like, oh, why you asked for the bathroom again today? You ask every day, because we're not often thinking about the whole child, and so that is the one thing that is really great about special education. We have to be always thinking about the whole child. So for me, that's kind of like a second nature thing. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So now, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit here with these questions because now I want you to explain to us and tell us what motivated you to become a restorative justice trainer.
Yeah, so was I, I was banging my head against the wall trying to figure out a way to get to everybody. I was like, okay, we got folks who have problematic views on race, folks who have problematic views on gender, folks who have problematic views on sexuality, whatever it was, right? It was all of these things. Folks who have problematic views on, class, right? Where like, oh, that person got money, that person doesn't, so we should make fun of them. So I was out here saying there's not enough time in a day to do it all, right? And
Mhm.
when I and there was a guy who worked at our district, Ben Clark. He was like our district's restorative trainer, and him and Elma Zonik from my district, they were saying we want to get a team together, and I was interested because of that. I was like, I gotta figure out a way to bring my advocacy to different levels than just focusing on special ed and focusing on Black kids, because there's so many other kids in this school, right? And since I have, like I said, that special ed mindset of each individual student deserves a plan that works for them, I also thought each individual student deserved the opportunity to connect to their school peers, right?
Mhm.
And to feel comfortable and safe in the school community. And so I was like, I'm all in on that. And so that was like the real crux of it. It's just that I didn't see another way to try and like help all students, right? I could have individually helped some folks, but I thought as a restorative justice trainer, I had a chance to touch, teachers from around the country in my district. First, it was my district, right? First, it was my school, then it was my district. And so I feel like I've been able to broaden my reach that way. And so I guess that's the main reason for doing it, and really now being passionate about it and doing it a lot. Now I'm doing it as much as I can.
So, just when we think about restorative justice and, the whole premise that you wanted to take this on, what was it about the students that you could tell, you could see, you could read, or you could understand that you realized that there was that something that was missing that you had to give back?
Well, there were several things. One, it was just knowing how even in my district, we're in Phoenix, we're as liberal a district or progressive, whatever you want to call that, a district as there is in Arizona. We were out there talking the talk, right? But then we still had the same discipline, disparities between Black kids and white kids and Latino kids and Native American kids, right? And so it still wasn't really working for them either, even in a place where the teachers and admin were more comfortable saying our Black and brown kids need something different. It still wasn't working. And so
Mhm.
doing the restorative justice work, I started seeing like, well, one, a big part of the restorative justice is not just the restoring of the relationship that was harmed. It was building the community so that you don't want to harm the relationship in the first place, right? So,
Right.
and so in that work, I started seeing like, oh, I found a way to start connecting people to schools because kids did not seem connected to schools. And it really got that. Obviously, COVID time, as everybody knows, they weren't even at school. And so then the re-entry to school was, a lot of people wasn't trying to hear it, when they got back, particularly high school level. I don't know how it was on elementary levels, kids, but it was really difficult for them to feel connected. And when they don't feel connected, that is when the harm is happening, whether it be the harm to themselves, like, there's drug use that happens in school, like marijuana and stuff like that, or, lots of fights, lots of just kind of, belligerent behavior in the classroom or something like that, that I think happens because they don't feel connected, so they don't care about it. And it just seems very high since I think the beginning of like cell phone culture, the disconnect from schools, right? And so I was like, I gotta figure out some way to help make this a little bit better.
So let me ask you this. Your county is what, Maricopa County?
Yes, I am Maricopa County. We,
Yeah. So what is the difference? Have you seen any difference between your county and the other outer counties? Because your county is supposed to be, I think, the hugest in the state, right?
yes, a big difference is so one, most of the districts in Arizona kind of definitely lean, just an ideology, kind of conservative, kind of traditional. And so what happens is at a lot of the schools like that, they don't even really hear about concept story, go against kind of traditional values. Whereas our district embraces, like for instance, there's districts out here, terms like PI or culturally responsive teaching, or they just, they might say, oh, it's all critical race theory. Our district is not like that. Our district is much, much more progressive and at least open-minded. Like I said, we are still, and that is what is scary for me when I think about other districts out there. I know that our district, open-minded, progressive view, welcome to hearing things like restorative justice. Obviously, they hired 5 trainers, right? And still have a lot of problematic practices, or at least results. Sorry, a lot of problematic discipline results with their Black students, particularly with their Native American students as well. And so it really concerns me about all those other districts who won't even listen. They won't. They don't even want to hear that their school could use something like restorative justice, where they're not, just disciplining a kid and kind of forgetting about him. Like that old day, the world, we were all kind of on board, right? So I think about, my parents, I got a belt a couple times. I was in the hard stage life, and in school it was the same. Teachers, be quiet or I don't even think about it. And that is really not what kids need as much anymore. They do need, I do think that people need discipline in their world, but the harshness and the way that you can do it dismissively is the kind of thing that you realize is disconnecting students to schools even further. And that is what we don't need. We need kids to schools to feel like schools, places that are welcome to us. Otherwise, we're not going to do well. And we already know what happens to kids who don't do well in school, who drop out of schools. There is.
So can you
Can you hear
explain
me?
what restorative justice? Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Can you explain what restorative justice means in the context of education?
Yeah, restorative justice in education. Sorry about that. So restorative mean, well, actually, it is a form of, one, connecting students to school, two, not using discipline that is only punitive, and making sure that if harm is done, people have a chance to address root causes of the harm, finding better solutions to reintegrating the students into school. So I think one of the misconceptions of restorative justice is it replaces discipline. It does not do that, right? It is discipline can still happen, but how are we being reintroduced into the environment? Are the people who were involved in the harm getting a chance to tell their side, to listen to the people who were harmed and hear their side, and to then try and rebuild their community structure so that it's better. And so that's what restorative justice is. I would say it's more like, I think traditional discipline practices are fast and kind of uncaring, and discipline practice, restorative justice is more, it's caring, it's connecting, it is not just discipline, it is also kind of a reintroduction to trying then connect, right? It is very easy for a person to harm another person, and even if they get a punishment, for that punishment to end, come back and still want to harm that person again, or at least not want to mess with that person again. Whereas with restorative justice, it is, well, now we all have to talk it out. We have to figure out root causes and see how we can now make sure that the harm doesn't happen again, and that you understand the effects of your harm on the environment that you're in. So it is more kind of like a grand way of making sure that discipline is not fast, is not kind of dehumanizing, and is truly restorative to the community. And so the major part of the most work you'll do when you're doing restorative justice is doing community building work, even when no behavior is happening, right? So that is kind of the core of it. It is make sure that you're always trying to make your community stronger so that no one wants to harm it. And so that if someone does harm the community in a way, there is an effort and a way to bring those people back in, as opposed to just, kind of discipline happen and you forgot about them and hope they don't do it again. Well, that doesn't really work.
Mm. So, how do you implement restorative justice practices in your school district?
Yeah. So, well, on a training level, it is, training teachers on how to do it. But for us, it is one, doing community building circles, right? So in classes, whether it's a circle, it's a square, however you can do it in your classroom. You're doing community building sessions where the students get around, and you start really easy. So beginning of the year, it is, you get in a circle, like I said, square, whatever it is, where everybody can see each other. So that's the first thing. Everyone's on the same level. So I'm not using my teacher chair when I'm doing restorative justice. I'm using the chairs that they're sitting in. And we start with something very simple, right? What is your least favorite food? And everybody goes and laughs. They're like, spinach, broccoli, all veggies pretty much, right? Because a bunch of high school kids. And, something like that, because you want to find connections early. So you do that for a little while, right? So if you could be a person who does it every day, or when I train people, I tell them at least do it once a week, right? So once a week during the advisory period, which most now high school classes have, some sort of advisory or some period where they're kind of like with homeroom, they would call it back in the day, all of that.
Yes.
So I would say do it once a week. And so then you start getting into deeper stuff. So the first couple sessions is like that. Least favorite food, favorite sports team in Arizona, whatever, something easy. So that everybody will get used to participating. And then it gets into deeper stuff. Like, what about this school would you like to see improved, right? What about this class would you like to see improved, right? And then even deeper than that, what are some of your biggest fears? You know, what tell me about your worst day here in high school so far, so that everybody is seeing that people are going through similar stuff, because that is the kind of stuff that winds up in, right? So when you're sitting in the class, and I think about, some of the classes I was in growing up, if I'm sitting in a class and I am, this dude I moved to Willingboro, New Jersey when I was in 10th grade, right? South Jersey. And from Central Jersey, I grew up in Trenton and Hamilton. And I go to Willingboro and I don't know any of the people. And I'm in class with them sitting, and I have no idea if, they are also struggling with money like my family did. If they, also like some of the teams I like, or, whatever the vibe was, sitting there alone, and to meet your friends, and then you just huddle up with your friends. Whereas you can leave a class, you can be in a classroom for 180 days, and it's a whole year, right? 180. in terms of, no weekends and stuff like that. And you could leave not knowing 20 of those people at all, really. You know what they sound like because you've heard them answer some questions. You know if they're a good or bad student, usually, particularly back in the day, because teachers would straight up tell you what your grades are out loud. But you didn't really know anything else about them. And so when I was in a class and it was just like, oh, that person, that's a boy who dates other. I don't know what the vibe was when I was a kid. I don't know. So what does that mean to me in my life? How do I hang with them? And so I didn't have an issue. Fortunately, my parents raised me to be pretty open-minded, but I also then was like, I don't say to that person, right? Because that winds up disconnecting us, right? So I think about my students now, special ed. The students on campus will love them if they took a chance to get to meet them, but they're worried. They're not. Gone are the days of people running around using the R word or being blatantly racist, sexist. That doesn't happen too much. But what does happen is we just self-segregate. We're like, I don't know what those people are about. At least I know the people who look like me must have something in common with me. But if
Right.
they're like you, then what? If they're a woman, if they're saying I want to use they them pronouns, whatever it is, if they're dating someone of the same sex, you are then saying, even if you don't have hatred or closed-minded vibes, hatred in your heart, you are still saying, well, I don't know the vibe. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I don't say anything.
Right.
And we wind up not knowing each other when we do that. So if we do these sort of circles and community building practices, then we can get into the crux of the work, which is if harm happens, we can have conversations about the harm so that people can see it on a different vibe. It is what could possibly stop a person from saying, I'm never coming back to that school again. Or worse, I'm going to do something crazy to some people in that school, right? If they
Yeah.
get to hear what was happening, right? And so that's what it's really about. It's about the community building part, but that is what gives you the opportunity to come back from harm, to restore something, meaning you had a relationship to restore. You know what I mean?
Wow. So, the school now it sounds like it's like really exciting compared to I know when I went to school. So I'm back in the 80s.
Okay. I, I was high school 88. I went to high school in 88.
Right. So I mean, so I'm in high school in the 80s, of course, graduating in the 80s, the early 80s. And so it sounds like now that you guys as teachers slash instructors have to be more than just a second parent. You've got to be what's that? A mediator. You've got to be a confidant. You've got to be a counselor. You've got to just have some kind of listening that makes people feel special. I mean, how does that work? Because that's a lot of work to put on particular individuals.
You are so right, because I think about when I started, because I started teaching almost 30 years ago, right? 28 years ago. And we
Mhm.
were still at that point where it was just like you sit down and you listen to your teacher and that's it. You know what I mean? So, and so it was so much easier.
Right.
And fortunately, things never change in a day, right? So
Right.
it was gradual kind of change that I think made it palatable for teachers to be able to do it. Because yes, we one day we looked up and we were like, man, we're kind of doing some social work in there. We're out here doing a little thing, a little parenting, a little, a lot of educating, whatever it is. And so it just starts to happen. Your jobs morph, and our job just happened to morph into a job that requires a little bit more. But I do think that is now reflected in kind of the trainings we'll get and stuff like that. Whether it be beginning of the year if you're already out of school, or even when folks are taking classes or undergrad, because I've spoken around the country to a few of those types of places as well, and it sounds like they are preparing everybody for that. So now I think teachers don't go in thinking like we did back in the day, like, oh, I know, like I teach world history, I know a lot about world history, so I'm gonna be good. Like that is not what you're thinking. start your teaching career anymore, you do know there's much more that you have to do, and it kind of just feels like part of the job. And so it just subtly changed. You know, I mean, like the world subtly changes, right? When I think about when I was growing up, growing up in the 80s and stuff like that. Like I couldn't imagine a high school where there would be like two boys holding hands,
Mhm.
because they're dating or something like that. That was not a thing when I was a kid. Like obviously there were gay folks out there, but
Yes.
they would never have felt that comfortable. And
Right.
now that feels comfortable. And it wasn't like one day schools were like, "Oh, you can hold hands now, boys." It just the world starts to gradually change, and so with it, and our workload changed in education a lot when I think they just started realizing students kind of need it. Was just as the world changed, and I think now with with things like, cell phones and things like that, where students are a little even less connected than maybe we were when we were young. At least the folks who lived around us, we were kind of close to back then because we would be outside playing with them and stuff
All
uh,
the time.
all the time, right? All the time. So you felt, you had that comfort at least. They
Hmm.
don't really have that all the time. So I think we know that it's a bit more critical to try and make sure that they have a chance to connect to schools, and what can we do to make them like we have to be so much more entertaining than we did back then. If you think about some of the lessons we had when we were in high school, it would be a teacher might be writing on the board and be like, "You better be writing with me," and that's it. The whole class. And if anyone ever taught right now, it would be like, "Oh, you about to get fired. Like you can't do that." And so
Right.
quite a different world, but I think it's gradual enough that an old person like me is not feeling too stressed, you know.
Let me ask you this, because now these two questions I'm about to ask you to follow up on this, because this is really important, and I think it's something our audience probably really is asking. I don't want this to sound insensitive, but do you think Columbine High School was the start of all of this that is causing this ruckus in the high schools, and with these people having to be a little bit more adaptive and looking at people that don't look like them, but being so what do you want to call it, having preference and so forth, that it feels like this is where the difference is coming in, and there's like a major struggle for these places that are outside the major metropolitan cities in all these states. Do you think that's the case?
Yes, so I do think since Columbine, our teaching lives changed a lot. Again, it wasn't like the next day, right? And obviously, gun laws didn't change at all. But
Mhm.
we did have to start doing like drills where we're hiding under our desk before, and now it's we have some running drills and we have some hiding drills and things like that. So it changed that way, but it also changed in a way that I think even parents don't feel like schools are safe places all the time. And so I
Mhm.
think that was kind of part of then the disconnect from like parents to the school staffs. Whereas I remember when I was a kid, my parents were like, they said to my principal, "Oh, you can hit him if he's acting like he's acting crazy,"
Okay.
you know, because it did feel like, well, the school is a safe place and the people in the school know what they're doing, so that's it. And I
Mhm.
do think after Columbine, obviously it wasn't the fault of the teachers or the admin or anything, but it was just like, well, we send our kids to schools, so y'all are supposed to protect them, and it sounded like these it's not a safe place anymore, so we're gonna need more. And
Mhm.
so I do think because of the not just the evil nature of the crime and the awful nature of the crime, that Columbine wound up changing, because it wasn't just that, it was also what are schools now. They're on the news. The Columbine's on the news for months, and then there's a movie made about it, the porn stuff. And so I think then it was like schools don't sound the same as the schools I grew up in, and that snowballed into now disconnects. And then you brought up and like kind of the people outside of metropolitan areas, like the folks and rural communities like that. And then it brought up rural communities are nothing like, urban communities. So why are we leaving those folks out as well? And, and it became, schools became, less just we automatically give y'all the benefit of the doubt that y'all are just here educating them and everything's going to be fine. Now it is like you got to consider so many different things, and it did start with Columbine, and now, when I think about some of the things that cause public concern for schools, and whether it be parents, whether it be legislators, lawmakers, it seems like it is that divide, right? If people from rural communities saying these city communities are getting all the funding and blah blah blah, and then people from communities like, the people from rural communities are not respecting education, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
That divide has become because the system of education has become a larger conversation uh,
Mhm.
the last 30 years, and it seems like it's getting more hyper focused by the day.
That is true. So what inspired you to start a mentorship program in your school district?
So that was, you think about how hard it was at first for me. You know, I think a lot of people think about jobs, because I've had jobs that were not teaching jobs as well, not as an adult. I mean, I've been doing it for 28 years now, so I was like 22 when I started. But I had jobs before that, like at the rec center at Seton Hall, or I was at McDonald's. I was at a few other places, and a lot of times in most jobs just automatically get better, right? You just get better. And so teaching this is similar, but it is not the kind of better you can deal with when you're a teacher and you're still not getting that advice. Because you would think, okay, there's a teacher, he started in September, maybe by Christmas time he will have his footing and know what he's doing. But that is not how it works in education. And on top of it, like we had talked about earlier in this program, like the state of teaching has been changing also a little bit too. But I just felt like it wasn't just 1 year, it wasn't just 2 years. I felt like I didn't get comfortable in the job 7, 8 years into it. And so I don't feel like people should have to deal with that, because this is when we lose most people who leave early, of course. When you start working, folks who are my age who are working in school still, they're not leaving. They have good benefits there now. Even their salaries are decent after a while. You've been working there for so long, but like, oh, I got this pension coming, or and I realized, you realize the value of healthcare when you're older. When you're younger, you're not thinking about that kind of stuff. But when they're younger, we have a hard time like keeping them, because they're also broke, right? So they're not making much money when you're a new teacher,
Mhm.
and the job is hard. So I was saying to myself, that combination in the beginning for me kept me a bad teacher for a long time. I felt like I wasn't a teacher for a while. When I look back at the time, I'm sure I thought I was fine, because not just was I was confused, and it wasn't getting as easy as most jobs do in that quick amount of time, but I also had to rush from that job to another job, right? Which is what a lot of young teachers are doing.
Mhm.
And so it just took so long to learn it that I'm like, well, we got to at least eliminate that if we can, right?
Mhm.
Do what we can to mentor young teachers. So at least while they're on the job, is not that hard, because if you get a grip on the behavioral stuff, the behavior management of things, and delivering the curriculum, if we can help someone do that, the love for students is there. Almost all of us went into teaching for that, right? And
Mhm.
so if they could just deal with that, they're going to still have the stressors of not having a lot of money, not getting sleep at night, whatever it is. Um, but at least you feel competent in your job. I think it's such a fun and worthy and beautiful job if you have a handle on it. But before you have a handle on it, it's just a super difficult job, right? And the importance of it. You're sitting there like, I'm dropping a ball on people's lives. These students need a good education, and I'm not giving it to them. And you're racking your brains, and that is the thing that can get you out of the classroom. And so the mentorship program seems necessary. That's a national thing. that we're just trying to grab as many teachers as possible who are new and saying, you're not alone. We can help you get through at least your school days. We know that your nights are probably going to be tough, but your school days shouldn't be that tough. Yeah.
Can you describe the structure and goals of your mentorship program?
Yeah, so it is each person gets people in there. So, like, I am a high school self-contained teacher. The only people I've mentored were other high school self-contained. Now they don't have to be in the same state. We prefer that because you can go there. But I mentored a person in Louisiana. I mentored a person in North Carolina. Because you can do it online, and just it is a first. We go through a bunch of stuff and say, where are your what are the problems for you?
Mm.
Right. So because some people come in and say, oh, I'm doing all right with behavior management. I'm actually having a hard time with the curriculum, or
Mhm.
vice versa, or just whatever, or admin, or I feel like I'm just lost out here. Whatever it is, we say to them, we figure out what the issues are, and then we dive into it. And so even a teacher like me, veteran teacher, 28 years, a lot of accolades. Even then, I say, okay, maybe this is outside of my purview. We have a whole group of trainers who then I would say, I'll talk to that trainer, get back to you on the stuff. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But it is about like needs for the individual. It's kind of like the individual education plan that I talked about earlier. It
Mhm.
is, what do you need? We probably have the person who can help. Hopefully, have a person who can help. And if not, I'll go research it and help you. But know that you're not going to be alone. And I think that has been like the most important part of it all. It is just the knowing that someone's on your side to just always drop questions to. People don't necessarily feel comfortable dropping questions to like a admin because they're like, are that person now thinking I'm not capable? You know what I mean? So yeah, so we kind of do like a needs assessment and just kind of attack. And even if we have to say, oh, there's a mentor who's better for you, then we'll give you that person. Yeah.
So, how do you select the mentors and mentees for this program?
So mentees is open. So it is just we put it in like Instoy, which is like a big network, national network of state teachers of the year. Put it in there for all of us to just send out to districts and saying $0. Our money was granted, and so finding people who have need and then doing it. So what we wound up finding was, some places, particularly places like, like Phoenix, Arizona, because I'm here. Some of the
Mm.
places where some of the main mentors are, there's more schools who are participating because they've gotten the word out. So it's kind of word of mouth there. And then the individual, so then it's that. It is most districts, what they were doing was kind of not even giving the new teachers an option. They were saying, have a first meeting with these people. And then we could say, oh, that person's good. We'll just consult with quarterly or something like that. Or, yep, that person needs the help and we got them. And so it kind of goes like that. But it's most of the time it is districts saying all our new teachers.
So, what are some of the key qualities you look for in a mentor?
Um, say what are the key qualities outside of content? So we do have to make sure people know their content right well.
Mhm.
But one of the key qualities is the way that they interact with other people. So are you the kind of person that is just comfortable, meeting a new person, vibing with them, figuring out what they're about, and then doing your best to work with them. So that's kind of an important quality because you need for the person to feel comfy, like not like, oh, there's another person in my life that I'm not relating well to. And so I got even more stress, right? So it's kind of been that. It is, what is the vibe that person gives? Are they a warm and welcoming kind of person who can talk to anybody? And these are a lot of the mentors are like that. Yeah.
So, how do you support and train mentors to be effective in their roles?
Yeah, so there is two leads who now just do the job. That's like their job. right? So they are out there training the new mentors who come in, and we did put together the training program for them. Um, two people from Instoy, me and Rebecca Milwaukee, and so the rest is now have this rubric that shows these are like it's 15 pillars, and these are the things they need to understand in order to come on and be a mentor, and so they get trained by the people who are around.
So, what are some of the key benefits of restorative justice for students and the school community?
For students, it helps them feel like the school is like a bigger part of them. So I would say I would compare it to like when if you were out there, you were in a high school that had some good sports teams. Like my high school had a couple good sports teams, and how y'all connected to that sports team together, right? When you think about they're chanting together, they might be, painting their faces and stuff like that. Whatever it is, they're doing cheers together as an audience. And so, if you do the work classes to build community, you could get classrooms where people feel so connected to that classroom that they want to cheer for the people, right? They want to protect it at all costs. And it matters happening in there. That's kind of what I feel like restorative justice gives students. They have a place to go to that feels like, if you are a big, like I'm a big basketball fan, like when I go to a basketball game at my school or hall where I went to college, like I feel automatically I could go right now on Seton Hall campus. I live 4,000 miles away, but if I went on that campus and there was a basketball game, me and all the people around me are gonna have a good time rooting for our team. And I feel like what restorative justice has done to students is when they walk through the doors, classrooms of this, they are feeling that I feel like I'm pleased. Even if I walk into it alone, like me walking into a basketball game alone, right? So I walk into it alone, but I'm not alone once I get there. We all are on a mission to make this a great space.
Yes. Can you share an example of a successful restorative justice intervention you facilitated?
So I would say probably the most successful one I had was with two staff members, because I also do restorative justice for staff members, and probably because
Oh,
it was the most potentially detrimental. It was two teachers from the same department who were definitely not being great to each other. It was also students, and so brought up concerns talking about, oh, this teacher think about that teacher, etc. Rough. So they come in and do restorative justice with them, and the first thing I did was figure out after I looked at them like they were crazy, like y'all like Rumble. No, the first thing I did, I had them both list their three main teacher values. What are your most values? Because I knew that one of their values was going to connect to the other person's values. There's so many, and I do think teachers deep down, we all, we have that love for teaching and kids, and and we are a bunch of people who just want to make the world a better place. And so they listed their values, and I was like, you all have values that connect, and they were like, well, yeah. So why isn't because they want to still be arguing, and I was like, well, time to sit there, and one person get a chance to talk, and the other one listens. The other person gets a chance to talk, the other one listens, until we figure out kind of the crux of this and how we can rebuild this. And they wound up rebuilding it, and just their department is driving because one of them was a department head, and So their department is thriving. They are just they were both like really dynamic teachers. So
Kareem, Kareem.
it was and it was relatively immediate, which usually at a time, and maybe because they were adults, it happened faster. And then it was like, well, the one hit on the first couple, understand the other person. Did I lose my connection? Hello?
Well, actually, yeah, your internet kind of slowed down or something.
Hello?
The
Am I,
wireless connection, because okay, there you go. Now it just the frame just
hello?
moved forward.
Oh, should I
Okay.
repeat my what we like?
Well, no, no, that's okay. No, because actually you're like all the way clear now. You're all the
Um,
way clear. Okay. Can you hear me?
yes. Can you hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you face as a special education teacher?
I would say probably some of the biggest challenges is trying to figure out a way to connect my students to the broader school. Because my students, so there's several levels to special education. My students are the students who like can't go around campus on their own, right? A couple of them are in wheelchairs, and a few of them just they wouldn't be able to get around on their own and things like that. So they're kind of the students that I think a lot of other students really feel apprehensive about, making friends with and things like that because they don't know what to say. They're often around an adult, and things like that. So it has been a challenge just making sure we keep in mind that while we have really great communities in our self-contained classes. There's 3 classes like mine at our school.
Mhm.
And to make sure we are also thinking about how their general education peers are able to hang with them, access them, have access to them, as opposed to us just happily being a little special ed right here that is very safe and very fun and things like that. So it takes effort to make sure we are reaching general education students on campus and connecting them to them because they're their peers as well.
Right. So, how do you stay updated with the latest developments and techniques in special education?
Well, that from we do have a really good special education department for our district because our district is pretty big. It's like 24 schools. Um, but our special education like staff level is really solid. And so they're pumping out trainings constantly. We have like I days, they call them. It's like once a month where we get full days of training. Um, when the students get work from home. And
Mhm.
so those days, it is always, whether it be a curriculum tool that we're using or new strategies for working with students, that is kind of how we keep up on it. And for me, I think as an older person, I think a lot of the older teachers are like paying close attention because we know a lot of younger people sometimes it goes, it's secondary for them because they're using the technology or whatever it is. Um,
Right.
like that. I'm not taking it for granted. So I just focus a lot during our curriculum time because I think a lot of teachers don't like kind of curriculum development days and things like that. I am also probably one of those people, but I do pay close attention because I know it'll be very easy for me to be disconnected from like the world of young people. And so yeah, we do get a lot of it, and which is good. I do think it is helpful if you pay attention and make the most out of it.
So, what role do you believe technology plays in special education today?
Oh, really big, because one of the great things about what technology was able to give us is people out there who are creating curriculum tools and things like that. Like two of the curriculum tools I use were made by folks who have kids who have special needs, right? And
Yes.
one of them is this comprehensive reading curriculum that gives stories to high school folks who might their reading level might be pre-K or kindergarten or first grade, like my students, but they're not giving them like nursery rhymes and like ABC books. They're still stories about adult life, right? Young adult life. There's still stories about, oh, maybe liking a classmate, or maybe, playing on the sports team, or maybe, volunteering at a shelter. We just did a story about that. That's why it was in my head. But also, like today, in world history, working on explorers, also stories about explorers, but just the reading level. So one of our tools, it is the reading level could be, on grade level, so 12th or 9th or 10th or 11th, or, 2 ticks under, 6 ticks under. So the same story, and this is automatic. I just click a button and say,
Right.
so on the class, and I know, oh, Jonathan gets it on, and they do numbers, but say third grade, this person gets it on first grade, but it's still a story that is appropriate, still world history, which is not a subject even taught in elementary school. And so that is what technology does. It really has changed the game in terms of giving folks in special ed viable curriculum that is, you know, that is on the level that they should be reading about, hearing about, not baby, or you know treating them like they're little kids, because they're not that, right? They're just learning different. And so I love what curriculum tools are doing with technology is able to give us in that respect, because otherwise we were out there trying to figure out ways to look at a standard 12th grade book that none of my students would be able to read based on levels, and write up stuff that would be, just a paragraph or so on the level that my kids can read. I would have to do that for every assignment, right? And now, and tools, you don't have to worry about any of that. And even, things like Magic Schools, which is like an AI tool.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
there's an AI tool you could type in. Um, So I'll go back to world history, right? We were learning about the Renaissance. You could type in the Renaissance. You could say, give me a lesson on the Renaissance with reading material that are first grade level. And then boom, they just send it out for you. Give me questions that are open-ended, but could be could be learned by somebody reading on the second grade level. Give me multiple choice questions related to this article. Pumping it out. Like, it is amazing. It is amazing. Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the AI game is a big deal, and it is happening whether you want it to happen or not, because then what that also means is make sure your kids are learning AI papers and things like that. But it is really cool to have a tool where you can say, man, there's nowhere I can find a reading passage on first grade level that talks about, you know, the Magna Carta. So
Mhm.
what am I going to do? I can go to Magic Schools and just tell the AI machine to make me, and it's wild. It is wild. Mhm.
Ooh. So,
Mhm.
how do you foster a supportive and inclusive classroom environment for all of your students?
Yeah, so that is community building circles, right? Making sure that everybody in class, teachers, students, students to teachers, teachers to students, understand each other, and and know enough about each other that we don't often make some of those mistakes that people don't come back from sometimes, right? So I think about, like, you know they think about us as Black folks, right? Some Black folks totally cool with other Black folks using the N word, right, around them, and some are not, right?
Right.
That's how life works, right? If you don't know and you're used to being around people who are a certain way, you might just do it, right? And then you might have lost the person because the person like, oh, I don't like people who are like that. And so in my class, we all know what each other needs. So we all know how each other expresses ourselves, and we all know our ideologies. And so we don't get as often we don't get those kinds of confusions that makes a kid say that kid is not for me. You know what I mean? And so I think that's a big inclusive thing to say we're going to figure out every kid in this class. I have a kid in my classroom who doesn't like to talk that much, but she will express herself in drawing, the music, that kind of thing we know and respect. And so then when a kid is like, "Hey, I said something to John and John didn't say anything back," is it because John is super rude and I can't mess with him, or is it because John doesn't like talking overall and maybe we can draw together later, right? And so those kinds of things have fostered that kind of environment, but also just the individual way that we, well, I say we because I have two paraprofessionals in my class who are amazing. One, Carla's been with me for 10 years. One, Raina's been with me for 8 years. And so, we're out there also kind of giving them lessons that are taught to their level. And that's helpful too in the classroom, right? That there is an inclusion of saying, there's a kid in my classroom who can read at the third grade level. There's a kid in my classroom who can learn at the pre-K level. But they can be together, they can learn together, and it will be worthwhile because we figured out what they need, And so that's kind of the crux of it all, making sure you know what they need. And that's why I said it would be nice if regular ed individual education plans, because I think that is very helpful and making people feel really kind of connected to a school and feeling valued. Don't need that. Kids still want to feel like they have a place in this classroom, not just a seat in the classroom. They want to feel like they're a real part of it.
Right. So can you discuss any specific strategies you use to engage students with learning differences?
So strategy engaging is just like multimedia. It is just, I won't stand up and talk for too long, even though I think I'm super entertaining. Right. I won't play a video too long, even though I know they like to watch them. I won't. So it is, you might get an audio book and a video, my instruction, and some written stuff, maybe some art. And so it gives people different ways of learning the same thing, because some people won't get down with the paper we're learning, or some people won't get down with, you know, watching a video or whatever. And some people might have a hard time with, audio something or whatever it is. So it is kind of like a multimedia approach. Otherwise, nothing is that entertaining. There is no person who can entertain a classroom for 50 minutes straight. I'm trying. You could get, whoever, I don't know, Chris, they're not entertaining if they're talking content 55 minutes. So you got
Yeah.
to multi approaches to deliver the content. Yeah.
Um, how do you train other educators and staff in restorative justice practices?
So that, like, so I have about like I have a folder that has like a trillion things um, that I that I train with. So that's hard to pinpoint one thing, but I will say I have a restorative justice class that is 4 days and 4 sessions, and it's about 4 hours a session. So that's what my actual training is, and so I have it kind of all laid out. Um, and we in most of the training sessions there is same thing, like different ways. There's, you act out things in some of them, you listen to things in some of them, you sit in community building circles and feel what it feels like to do it. So that's kind of how I do it. I help them. I think the most important part of it is when I go into a restorative session, whether it be we're about to do 4 sessions together, like I've done that with some schools, or just a shortened session that's 1 hour. I am like, the feel of it matters because I want you to understand how you want your students to feel, right? If you leave here feeling good about how, your conversation at your table went, et cetera, that is what you want your students to feel like in their classrooms when they do kind of these community building circles. Yeah, but it is quite a process. I have quite a training set up there. Yeah.
So, what challenges have you encountered while promoting restorative justice, and how have you overcome them?
The, one of the bigger challenges, there's two. I would say one is the old school disciplinarians, right? And so we joked earlier about how we were disciplined, and I can't lie, I was fine with it. I'm one of those people who was like, yeah, I turned out fine.
I
I lived,
turned out fine.
yeah, got a couple beatings, but I made it through, Um, but we have a couple of old school discipline folks who are just, y'all just making these kids too soft, right? And those people are hard because they usually are also a little bit harder people, right? They're just, in general, they probably raise their kids, extra tough. I would say, I won't say too tough. They seem to only really respect that firm discipline, and so with those folks, I just keep reiterating that it is not a replacement for discipline. It is something that will give you the opportunity to have a little bit less need for discipline. And everybody wants that. No matter how hardcore you are about discipline, you don't want to do it. My dad, like I said, used the belt on me a couple times. He didn't want to do that. He wanted me to just behave. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so that's how I deal with those. And the second type is actually usually Black folks who are like, I already know how to age with Black folks wasting my time. I already know, right? And it's like, and the funny thing is, a lot of times they do. A lot of times it's like, oh, you get a Black teacher and a Black student in front of them, and sure, it oftentimes works out a little bit better. But
Yeah.
what I bring to them is, you are not teaching all 3,000 kids in your school, or my school has 3,000, or
Right.
whatever. You're not going to be able to teach every student in your school. So don't you feel that other people might need that skill that you have,
Right.
that you whether it be the vernacular, whether it be just the way you look, whatever it is, everybody needs that, and everybody doesn't have that. And if you think logically, everybody does it. So please allow that to happen for the good of everyone.
And how do you measure the effectiveness of restorative justice programs in schools?
I would say feels like school spirit, which is weird. School spirit is
Spirit.
measure, behavior or anything like that. But it
Right.
does feel like kids are out here walking halls and talking to each other, not avoiding the kids with special needs and things like that. So you would see, it would feel like one of those games I talked about where you're like, oh, they're tight out there, because that tightness is such a big part of also not delivering harm, right? Like when people are close, they're less apt to harm those.
Um, can you share a success story from your mentorship program?
Yes. So there's a teacher in California that I mentor. So I have to give my own stories there because I know the crux of it. Who was she was definitely about to leave the profession. She was kind of, matter of fact, when we started, she was kind of like, well, if you don't want to, take the time, I know you probably are busy with your own teaching. I think I'm gonna be all right. And I was like, oh no, this lady's about to leave. She was she was ready to go. She was having a hard time, and hers wasn't students either. It was an admin thing. And so, and I think what happens is you see a person who was decorated with awards, like, and I think she would have assumed, of course, oh, all admin loved me throughout my career. And so I was
Mhm.
able to kind of talk. I talked to you about this earlier, that I had a really, really hard time with an administrator here at the school I'm at right now that I love. And so I think I was able to find that connection with her, which, like I said, is the crux of kind of all my restorative work, finding connections. But she stayed. She wound up staying, and so I still keep in touch with her. Just started her school year. She is in like kind of like the Oakland area in California, and she was definitely about to go, and so she stayed. And I think she needed somebody to vent to, because how do you vent about admin when you're a new teacher? You're worried that, oh, I might say something to a teacher who knows that admin, and I certainly can't vent to the admin about themselves because I'm worried about my job when you're young, right? And so she wound up having me, and I was just talking to her about the strategies, and then she's looking at a person who's like, oh, I'm here and happy and healthy and thriving at my school, the same school in which I was kind of feeling like I was for a little while there. And so that was probably the success story. I think it always comes down to connections in the end.
What impact has the mentorship program had on students and the school community?
Yeah, I mean, for students, they are retaining good teachers, and because it is very hard for young teachers to stay nowadays, whether it be the cost of living and things like that. And so we're keeping more teachers in school, and that is the main part. And particularly when you think about a teacher who is willing to go through a training in which they're not getting paid, right? It's not like they get paid to get mentored. They just get mentored. And so the fact that they're willing to stick it out shows what kind of person they could be if we don't lose them in the school. And so that's been the main effect. These students are getting good teachers.
And this is going to be our last question. How do you address challenges or conflicts that arise within the mentorship program?
Um, Challenges and conflicts, you know, if it is a mentors, it's easier because we got to know each other. So when I am putting things together, it is I am making sure I'm also doing work with staff, as I told you earlier. When it is with a mentee, sometimes it's trickier. Particularly if it's online, it is okay. Find ways to positively communicate with them also when you're not on camera, because what we were seeing was you because the mentorships were usually one time a week or two times a week. And so what you were seeing was a person who was like, oh, I talk to you an hour once a week and you don't understand my pain, right? If they're still not making inroads with the thing. And I even felt it with a person I tutor where it was just like, you're not getting it, bro. Not changing it.
Mm,
And so I saw that even just a couple short, whether it be it was text with this one person I had difficulties with, but with other staff members, emails and things like that throughout the week. Because then they were like, oh, this is actually thinking about me, not just when they're doing their session. And so that was probably the best way to help the mentees. They needed to feel like it wasn't a job on my end and them just not getting what they needed. It was, oh, they're checking in more often. They're thinking about me at least. And so perhaps this problem can be worked out, because in the end, if a person believes a problem can be worked out, it usually there's problems in life that you're there. I can't work out if they're saying I'm 2 months behind in rent and my paychecks aren't getting higher. I don't know what to tell you, but things like staffing issues, student behavioral concern, those things will work out with time and effort. And so usually it is finding a way to make them feel like you truly value them. Yeah.
Well, I definitely will appreciate you taking this time, to spend with us and give us some insights as to the things that you're doing in your school and the community itself in general. And I would also like to ask, is it possible to have you back on the show for another appearance and we catch up as to where things are now? Well, from now to where they will be then.
Sure. Sure.
I definitely appreciate that. And also there's because I definitely think that there's a lot of things though I'd like to just find out about some things that I'm doing that I would definitely love to have your input on as well.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, so for those that are watching on the YouTube channel, I would appreciate if you guys would please hit the subscriptions and the notifications button so that every time we have a show, you will be notified as to when that show is about to take place. And all you'll have to do is just click on the link and you will be inside the show. For everybody else that's watching outside of the YouTube channel, please make sure your support stays as it is. Please let us know your feedback. And the our first year award that we're giving out is going to be the America and Black and White Person of the Year. So as you check out all these episodes, please send me your vote. If you want to leave a comment or if you want to email me directly at czkenterprise7@gmail.com and let me know who your choice is for the American Black and White Person of the Year. We will do that award on December 31st, which is our year-end special. And I'll tell you, we've got a lot of good guests on the show, including Mr. Neal here, who has shown some significant impact in his community when it comes to education. And God knows, we all fear for our students, but we can say that we've got teachers like him, they're in good hands. I'd like to thank you again for being here with us. And you guys have a great evening. We will see you guys